Inspirational Stories. The Window.
There were once two men, both seriously ill, who were sharing a small room in a large hospital. The room had a single window that looked out onto a beautiful park. One man, as part of his treatment, got a special privilege. For an hour each afternoon, he could sit upright in bed. This helped with his breathing problem. His bed was lucky to be right next to the window. The other man, however, had to lie flat on his back all day long. Every single afternoon, when the window man was propped up for his precious hour, he'd become a storyteller. He'd paint pictures with his words, describing everything he saw outside. The window apparently overlooked a beautiful park with a sparkling lake. Ducks and graceful swans glided across its surface, while children frolicked by the water, tossing breadcrumbs to the birds and sailing brightly coloured model boats. Young couples strolled hand in hand under the shade of trees, and the air was filled with the fragrance of blooming flowers. Beyond the park stretched green meadows where people played softball, their cheers drifting through the open window. At the far end, peeking through the trees, was a majestic view of the city skyline, a symphony of buildings bathed in the afternoon sun. The bedridden man, trapped in a world of his own making, would listen intently to his friend's vivid descriptions. He'd close his eyes and let his imagination paint a scene in his mind. He heard about a daring child who almost took a tumble into the lake, and the sight of young ladies in their colourful summer dresses brought a smile to his lips. His friend's stories were his escape, transporting him to the vibrant world outside his confinement. One day, a thought crept into the bedridden man's mind, a seed of envy slowly taking root. Why should his friend have all the joy of seeing the world unfold? Why couldn't he experience it too? Shame washed over him, but the more he tried to push the thought away, the stronger the desire grew. He would do anything to see for himself. One night, as he stared at the blank white ceiling, the man next to him was suddenly jolted awake by a violent coughing fit. He gasped for breath, his hands reaching out desperately for the nurse call button. However, the bedridden man just watched, frozen in place, even when the gasping sound ceased completely. The morning dawned, casting a pale light on the two beds. The nurse entered quietly, her face grim. She knew what she would find. The other man was gone. The nurse dealt with everything efficiently, taking away the empty bed and leaving behind a hollowness in the room. As soon as it felt acceptable, the bedridden man mustered his courage and asked if they could move him to the coveted window bed. The staff, unaware of the events of the previous night, readily agreed. They carefully moved him, made him comfortable, and left him alone. With a painful effort, the man propped himself up on an elbow, his muscles screaming in protest. Finally he reached the window. He inched closer, heart pounding with anticipation. He squinted, expecting to be greeted by the vibrant scene his friend had described so vividly. Instead, his gaze met a blank wall. The window he had coveted so desperately looked out onto a solid brick wall, a stark contrast to the park he'd imagined. A wave of emotions washed over him, shock, disbelief, and a crushing sense of guilt. The realization struck him with the force of a blow. His actions had stolen his friend's final moments of joy, all for a glimpse of something that never existed. The stories, the beautiful descriptions, it was all a figment of his friend's imagination, a gift offered out of kindness. His friend had never seen the park, never witnessed the happy scenes he had described. Yet, he had shared them with him anyway, a selfless act of companionship. The weight of his actions settled on the man like a heavy stone. He had traded his friend's final moments of peace for a fantasy, and now he was left with nothing but a crushing truth and the remorse that gnawed at his soul. The lesson learned. This story serves as a poignant reminder that we should not take things for granted and that appearances can be deceiving. The man by the window had the opportunity to share the beauty of the world with his bedridden companion, but instead he chose to fabricate a false reality. The lesson is that we should be grateful for what we have, rather than envying what others possess. The man on his back learned this the hard way, only to be disappointed when he finally had the chance to see the world for himself. This inspirational tale encourages us to appreciate the blessings in our own lives, rather than dwelling on what we lack. It reminds us that the grass is not always greener on the other side, and that true fulfillment comes from within.